I'm Alexa Burton, but you can call me Lexi. I'd like to welcome you to today's episode of Two Chairs and a Camera. With me today, I've got Denny Highben here to talk about his book. Say hi to the people.
Hi to the people.
So, we chatted super briefly about this.
Yeah.
Let's give everybody a rundown. What's your book called? What's your book about?
Can the camera see it?
I will take pictures of everything before you leave so I can insert them as close-ups.
This book is a biography, an interesting biography, not that some aren't interesting, about a man from Canton, Ohio, who had certain extra-sensitive gifts. He was a psychic, and he got away from those abilities because they caused him nothing but trouble when he was a kid. And years later, because he felt uneducated and insecure in trying to read and write, he sat down to record a letter to a friend in California who coincidentally was in the same high school, the same age, the same initials, and he was also very psychic. After they graduated, he moved to California. He came back to tell William Allen LePar, something's going to happen to you, you better get ready for it. And Bill said, basically, that's baloney, I'm not interested in that stuff anymore. He was married, he had just bought a small farm, and he was happy. Well, lo and behold, they said, we'll write back and forth, and Bill said, why don't we record? That way he wouldn't have to try to write a letter.
Okay.
He went out onto his porch one summer morning, I believe it was in July 1972, and his wife left for work. She came back down the drive. He said, what's wrong? Did you forget something? And she said, what are you talking about? The day's over. I've done my 8 hours. What have you been doing?
Lost time.
He lost more than 8 hours from the time, because they lived a half hour out of Canton, and she worked as a nurse in Canton. They looked at the tapes. They had been used. He put one in the recorder. He heard his voice, but it sounded very strange, laborious, deep. And the messages he didn't understand. They scared the bejabbers out of him. He thought he was going crazy.
Okay.
And by the end of his life, he was known coast to coast. He had gone to lectures and seminars coast to coast, speaking about the trance phenomena that occurred to him, but more about the necessity for people to realize how valuable they are. There's about their spiritual essence, that we all are divinely created beings. Ask me a question now. I'm beginning to get nervous.
Oh. Yeah. No getting nervous. I told you, this is real low key.
Yeah.
Well, we've clearly got what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah.
What got you inspired to write overall? Like, when did you start writing?
I just had a natural affinity for writing. I don't know. Well, when I was a little kid, my dad tried to make me play baseball. And that was a big mistake. My mom said, do you remember the time you were out in outfield reading a book?
Oh, that was so me.
Yeah.
My parents didn't put me in sports. I grew up, my family liked sports, but they did not force me to be in them. But like gym class, oh, that was so me. Daisy chains in the outfield.
Yes. She said, your dad was not happy with you. Because we lived right in front of a giant field, and we had built the older kids had built a couple diamonds there, even had a backstop with wire and everything. But I was just not athletically inclined.
Go out and play.
I would rather read a book than play baseball. Now I've got most of my sons are avid sports fans. One of them is coaches Little League on up through. Right now his son's in high school, and he's an assistant coach for the high school. But sports was not my bag. I tried football since I'm from Massillon. But I kept getting parts of my body broke. So
that's enough to put anybody off, isn't it?
So I was living with my sister at the time, and she said, "Why don't you quit sports and get a job and help pay your room and board?" So, but I got a job working at the newspaper, the Massillon newspaper, while I was still in high school, part-time, before school and then on Saturdays. And it just grew from there. I found an absolute love for journalism.
Okay.
You go out, you find the facts, you make sure you got them right. You have to have the story done by a certain time that day. Boom, it was a natural high for me.
And then that's a fairly, I don't want to say direct, but it's a fairly natural transition into nonfiction writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you are the first nonfiction writer I've had on the podcast.
Oh well, I'm honored.
I have to ask then, have you ever dabbled in nonfiction? You know what I mean.
Nonfiction.
Yeah, no,
Well,
nonfiction
fiction.
is what you write. Have you ever dabbled in fiction?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be an edit if I can manage it.
Yeah. Actually, I investigated this man. I was still a reporter, and I heard these claims made about him, and I didn't believe in any of this supernatural hocus pocus. I didn't believe in spirituality. You're born, you live your life, you die, and that's the end of existence. The standard scientific approach to our reality. And when I heard this, I just had to check it out.
Okay.
And after getting to know him and the people who were gathered around him, who were all quite normal, strengths and weaknesses, conservatives, liberals, some I had some extreme disagreements with about their policies and politics and so forth, just like normal, just like a regular community, and but they all accepted that this was a legitimate phenomenon, and I had to learn more, so I stuck with it. He would fall into these deep trances, and after a while, he learned to control them. And then he set out to find out how he should use this gift to help other people. That was his only interest, in trying to use a God-given gift to help other people. He never took a dime for it. He would have to charge, because if you don't charge for something, people think, well, it must not be worth much. So he'd charge a minimum amount to go to lectures and New Age seminars and so forth. He would speak mostly on spirituality, on what this voice, which I should say now, so I don't forget because I'm nervous, was known as the Consul. The Consul was 12 human beings like us who have passed away and no longer need this illusion of a physical life. If you look at quantum...
Sorry, my brain is just ticking here, because this is actually something I know something about. But that wasn't a question. It was to explain the weird look that must be on my face. It's not that I'm being disbelieving or skeptical. It's not that I'm being skeptical. I'm deep thinking.
Yeah, he knew he would have a lot of resistance doing this. He was raised a Catholic, and when it first started, he went to his priest and said, at the time they lived in Minerva, like outside Minerva on a small farm, he told his priest, I get really tired. Next thing I know, hours have gone by and I've got these tapes. Because the first thing he did after it happened, when he called his friend in California, his name was Walter Leonard. They both graduated in 1957 from Timken Vocational High School. He said, Walt, what's going on? And Walt said, don't worry, just send me the tapes. So he sent him the tapes. Another trance happened. He went to his priest. He actually thought he might even be possessed. Okay. So he underwent a formal Catholic exorcism.
Okay.
And they said, no, you're fine. He said, then what's happening to me? And can I read off the back of the book?
By all means.
I used this quote on the back. He said, it would come on, and I was so upset and disgusted and thought I was going crazy. Terrified for his sanity and his soul, he sought answers from his church. Finally, a priest concluded, some people have visions. Visions come in all different ways, where you have this thing where you go into a deep sleep and you talk and you can't remember. Then the priest added, who's to question how God wants to reveal himself? Eventually, he learned to control the trances through prayer and meditation, and then they would come on. And a nonprofit organization formed around him called the Saul Association for Research. It's had a couple different iterations, if that's the right word, of the name, but that's what it's known as now. It's a nonprofit, and they recorded all the trances afterwards 199 times in their official record. He did many other trances for individuals that are not recorded, but the Saul Association for Research has 199 archived trances, obviously hundreds of hours. Some of them would last 2-3 hours. And people got interested. They invited people in to ask questions of this council, this union of 12 formerly physical human beings who are now, who at the time are, for lack of a better term, in heaven. We find that heaven's not all we think it is either, because we really don't know. In the physical world the magnificence of the spiritual world, which is the real world. Mm-hmm. This, the council said time and time again, is an illusion. It's your illusion so that you can learn how to act lovingly with other people.
I can tell you right now, I already know like 3 people who are going to be interested in reading this book. Sorry, this is going just a very different way than most of my usual questions, which is perfectly fine. How did you meet this person?
I wrote to him and I said, I want to talk. By that time, he had started to gain some publicity. And actually, shortly before I wrote to him and said, I need to talk to you, I want to talk to you, he started seeking publicity. Mm-hmm. He had a couple of volunteers that went out, and he had newspaper articles about him in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Academic Journal, the Canton Repository, weekly papers around the area, the Evening Independent. I met him after a journalist at the Independent named David Crookston was asked to interview him by one of Bill's friends, a volunteer in this nonprofit organization. So Crookston went over, sat down with him, interviewed him, and it ran. He got the space in the paper, and he had the interview printed verbatim. It took 5 days to run it all, and that's when I said I gotta check this out for myself. I've always been the kind of person that doesn't believe anything unless I can prove it to myself. And being as I consider myself at the time, a fun-loving atheist, I had to check it out. So ask me another question.
Was there something in particular that he said that changed your mind, or was it just the whole experience of meeting him and seeing his abilities?
The whole experience. Well, he didn't show his abilities when I went over to talk to him. Well, he may have given me a reading, a psychic reading. I didn't have any idea what that was. I didn't know. I didn't really care.
And there are a lot of fakes out there. I mean, some people would definitely say all fakes.
Yeah.
So putting that in quotes, I very much understand. You've got to be conservative.
It's your responsibility to ask questions about everything. Mm-hmm. The one thing I remember from any teacher I ever had was my 9th grade English teacher. He said, question everything. And you have to remember, this was back in the Civil Rights Movement, the anti-war movement, and everything. And
now watch what you say. You're dating yourself here.
That's okay. I'm getting up there in years. I'm closer to checking out than I am to checking in. And actually getting to know him and participating in some of the trances many of the trances after 1980. I'm kind of looking forward to checking out. But it's interesting. Can I continue?
Yeah.
In one of the later trances, the council asked the people who were gathered, may have been 25, 30 people there, and he's comatose on the floor. They've got two recorders. They always had two recorders in case one failed, so they could record everything that was said, and then they typed it out, whatever the magic word is, and archived it. And they said, "Why are you people here?" And someone said, "To live as long as we can, to correct as much karma as we can. And if you do your best to correct karma, and the only thing you need to really know about correcting your karma is treat other people with dignity and respect. Do the best you can to be a good person." This book is
That's really what it should break down to in the world, right?
388 pages, and you can sum it up by just saying, just be nice. Now, of course, there are endless people that will not believe that there is a life beyond the physical world. That's fine. Nobody has the right to try to force somebody else to believe the way they believe. And that's one of the problems that we have in this world today. People can't be comfortable in their own life if there's somebody living a different lifestyle or have a different belief system next door.
Does it hurt you? Just be nice.
One of the people in this book, I interviewed a lot of the volunteers that have worked through the years. I went through the records, got lots of newspaper clippings and flyers from different events he was at. He said to this person, "You have no right to force your beliefs on anybody else. Focus on your own world. Focus on the people around you, your own environment. You do good there, you've changed the world a little bit. You do one good thing for one person, you've changed the world. You create your tomorrow today. What you do today, you'll answer for, or you'll be rewarded for tomorrow."
Was there a favorite part of this book for you to write, or a part that you keep coming back to as... Well, I mean, other than that quote, I suppose, because that's very poignant.
Within the book is his story from, I start out in his teenage years, when he's doing a paranormal experiment with his best friend, Walter. They had, like I said, had the same initials, WL. So they sat right in the same row.
Because that's how they did it in school.
In homeroom, first year in high school, freshman year. And they became instant friends because they were both from poor families. They both had to work after school, not because they wanted to, but because they had to help support their families. And they became very good friends. And Walt said to him one day, Bill said, I knew there was something strange about him, but I couldn't quite figure it out. Because Bill had given up on his paranormal sensitivities years earlier because they always got him in trouble. I mean, how would your mom feel if you said, "Oh, company's coming, I need to look at my toys to see which ones we'll play with because they have a kid." And then somebody knocks on the door. That was caused some difficulties within his family. So
I can see how that would be unnerving to parents.
But there was and we're getting into some serious stuff here. There was an incident after he met Walt, and Walt said, "Say, would you like to talk to people who talk to ghosts?" And he said, No. But Walt eventually talked him into meeting a couple elderly ladies, and then he learned that there were a lot of people that believed in psychic abilities. And he said it was like being a kid again. He said, there was a spiritualist church in Massillon, and Walt's family, Walt and his mom and his siblings, there was not a father involved, were regulars at that church. So Bill went over, and he and Walt would give readings to members of the church. And he said we became known as the shotgun boys because we could just pop things off left. And I think Bill's secret was he was very childlike, not childish, but childlike. He just believed he could do it without thinking about it for a second, for a second. And it went on from there until about a year and a half, 2 years after he started. He was driving home one night, and he had a very frightening experience. And it scared him to the point, he even says in the book, I kind of chickened out. It scared him that he was done. He wasn't doing any more of that stuff. And he shut it down until he was 33, when Walt had this impression, and he came back from California, flew back and said, you're gonna experience something new and different. We have to stay in touch. And that's when it all began. And that would have been in 72, and he pretty much kept it quiet. And after he had the silent, I won't say approval of the church, but not disapproval, he began to explore a little bit more. He met some people that were involved in or had an interest in psychic abilities and in the paranormal. And he started getting some publicity, and his life went on from there. I can show you a couple articles I brought here. One is from like 1981 from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and it can I dig it out now? This is from 1981 from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Ohioan says 12 old voices advise him. Ancient voices, it says. And that was 81. By 96, here's an article from the Canton Repository. Doesn't talk about the phenomena of these trances. The headline is, lecturer urges people to tune into their spiritual reality.
Was that him in the picture?
That's Bill in the picture. Here's an interesting photograph. This was taken in the fall of 1973. You'll notice the 10 lights over his head.
Yeah. Several
years later, as the trances continued, and he was questioning, should he continue doing this? It was absolutely throwing his life and his wife's life into turmoil. They said, remember the picture that was taken some time back of the lights over his head. He said the physical body has main chakras, but there are these other chakras, 12. And at the time that picture was taken, that's why those lights are there. There were 10 chakras opening. They said there are 12. They said the 11th will open soon, and the 12th has to remain closed until close to the time when he leaves the physical illusion. Okay. And about a year after that, he felt the need to start going public with the trances, and he invited someone to come down and witness a trance. It was a pretty turbulent time in their lives. And Nancy, I mean, how would you feel if you marry this guy, you love this guy, and in a couple of years you find out that
it is something that a lot of people could not handle.
Yeah. So she did quite well adjusting. Here's a photograph of him in trance. He always wore all natural clothing, cotton. No metal on his body, except I think he left his crucifix on around his neck. Actually, this photograph was taken during a filming by PM Magazine from WJW-TV in Cleveland. Shortly before this article from the Plain Dealer came out. That's one of the reasons they called him and wanted to do an article. And that episode was shown in May or June. It was filmed in April. It was shown in May or June. And then things just rolled downhill from there. He started getting more publicity and started speaking coast to coast. Here's a picture of him lecturing roughly a few years later in Philadelphia at a Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship session. And all the time he did it for free. You know, like I said, you have to charge something or people won't think it's value. There's an old story about a chemist from World War II who developed a cream, a skin cream. And he developed it afterwards. He put it on the market. It wasn't going anywhere. And he went to a professional, said, how can I make this product a success? He said, charge more and put it in a fancier bottle.
Yeah, I get
it. Boom, it became a success.
So, how long did it take you to write the book?
Well, I wrote a couple other books about the information coming through his trances. One on past civilizations, one on the reality of AIDS.
Now, did you end up publishing those? Are they available somewhere?
They're available. They're available through the internet. You know, Amazon Books, whatever. They're listed there. You can find out more about them by going to the website, WilliamLePar.com.
Okay. And you're listed as the author on those?
No.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
What am I saying? They have a number of books by him and by others in the group who've written them. So I had written a couple others, but they only, because it's a small nonprofit, they only printed them in ring bound and only sold them at their events. So there's a book that he authored with two other volunteers from this organization called Life After Death, A New Revelation. That's perfect bound in paperback. And there are two others that are collections of his essays that he wrote for this organization's quarterly newsletter. And they're very good. There's a lot in there that makes you think about your own reality and what potential each of us has as an individual creation of the original creator. I can use the word God, I can use the word divine creator, you can use any word you want. The problem with mankind, one of the problems with mankind is we start dividing ourselves in words. And there is a struggle between the light and the darkness. Go back as far as the Essenes, who are credited with leaving the Dead Sea Scrolls in those pots up in the hills. They understood the battle between the light and the darkness. But it really truly only happens within the souls of each of us as individuals. We have to find our way back into the light.
So is there another project on the horizon? Another book?
Oh boy. Yeah, there are a couple. There's a chapter in this book about his working with a doctor, a Canton doctor. That man is still around. I interviewed him for the book, where the doctor would hypnotize Bill, put him in a very deep state of hypnosis, and he could diagnose illnesses in some of these doctor's patients. Well, they really only did diagnosing, and as the doctor told me, he said at that time we were both burning the candle at both ends, and the doctor just couldn't keep up the pace of working with Bill, so that stopped. But many years later, one of the volunteers in the group, who Bill had told about these experiments, he said, could you do that for my mother-in-law? She has ovarian cancer, and the doctor said she doesn't have long to live. So Bill agreed to be hypnotized and had several visits to her she lived another 20 years. She got to see 13 grandchildren grow up. There's a couple other examples in there of that. So the next project for me and for one of the other members of this organization who's going to assist me is to write a book about the potential use of hypnosis in healing.
Also something I know a little something about. Well, we're running out of time.
Oh, gee.
So the way I like to wrap these up is tell me one fun tidbit or fun story, tidbit, interesting fact about you that doesn't have to do with writing in your books.
Fun?
Yeah. Quirky, whatever.
I got a weird sense of humor a lot of people don't appreciate.
I can get on board with that too.
But, you have to have a sense of humor in this life, And, well, actually, the council, the source that spoke through him, 12 beings uniting as one, they endorse humor.
Okay.
A lot of the humor we have today, not so good, but the idea of laughter is extremely healthy for the soul. And
well, it was an absolute pleasure having you. How much do you do on social media? Do you have any kind of author socials links that I can post?
Not yet. I don't know how to do that. WilliamLePar.com.
Okay.
And if people wanted to actually physically write to purchase the book, I have the address here that I can whip out and say.
Well, not right now, but email that to me, and then I will list that all in the description down below. So if you want more information on the book, or on Denny, or on William LePar, everything he sends me will be down there. But
well, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You're welcome.
This is the first podcast. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
That I've ever done.
Well, I hope you get to do many more. And it was very interesting and a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
And if you enjoyed this episode, if you could give the video a like and subscribe or follow on whatever platform you happen to be watching or listening on, I greatly appreciate it. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye!